A vault beneath Rome, a map of Egypt, the secret that should not exist. Deep beneath the Vatican, below the marble floors and famous chapels, there is another world, a world of rock, dust, and locked stone. Imagine a corridor so old the air itself feels ancient, ending in a single sealed door. No hinges, no handle, just a slab of stone blackened by time. For centuries, records in the archives whispered that this chamber had not been opened for 5,000 years, long before there was a Rome, long before there was a church. And now, under harsh electric lights, the stone begins to move. Hairline cracks race across the surface. Dust falls like ash. A low, grinding echo rolls down the tunnel as conservators and priests step back, shielding their faces. When the door finally shifts, cold air spills out from the darkness, carrying the dry, bitter smell of something that has been hidden for centuries. So what have they found inside? Not gold, not bones, a bundle. A fragile roll of papyrus wrapped in decayed linen and sealed with a faded red symbol that is not a cross, not a Latin letter, but an Egyptian sign. Carefully, gloved hands lift it out, and under glass, under magnification, the impossible is revealed. It is a map of Egypt, not the Egypt you know from textbooks. This papyrus shows a Nile that branches and curls in ways the real river never did, feeding ghost channels into the desert. There are pyramids inked on the page centuries before any pyramid is supposed to exist. And in the empty western sands far from the known valley, a city is drawn and named where no city should be at all. Along one edge runs a narrow column of symbols, names stacked one above another like a list of kings. But these are not Narmer, not Djoser, not Khufu. None of these names appear in any official Egyptian king list carved on temple walls. To the expert staring at the screen, this is one of the most interesting discoveries they have ever seen, because it points to something Egypt never wanted remembered. The papyrus hints at a first dynasty before the first dynasty, a line of rulers ruling a Nile that flowed differently, building monuments that should not exist, presiding over a civilization Egypt itself tried to erase. According to letters buried in the Vatican archives, this strange document surfaced in early modern times, passed through the hands of collectors, and was quietly locked away by church officials who feared what it might mean for biblical and ancient history. If this map is real, everything has to move. The sudden rise of Egypt, the age of the pyramids, the long, slow death that ends with Cleopatra and Rome, all of it would need to be rewritten. Imagine using this single sheet of brittle papyrus as a script, following it from the erased kings at the top of the list to the last queen standing against an empire. But the strangest thing on the papyrus is not what it shows. It is what someone tried to destroy. Near the bottom of the column of names, the ink stops. The surface is torn and gouged, the fibers shredded by a blade. Knife marks cut straight through the papyrus where a single name once stood, a name carefully scratched out as if erasing it could erase the disaster it caused. According to a faint note in the margin, this was the pharaoh who broke Egypt forever. Who was this forbidden ruler? And why did both Egypt and the church decide the world should never see that name again? Myths, walls, and locked doors. How Egypt and the Vatican learned to hide history. So if one name on a torn papyrus was dangerous enough to carve out with a knife, imagine what else had to be locked away. Not just in one building, in two of the most powerful information fortresses in human history, ancient Egypt and the Vatican. Picture this. In Rome, marble corridors stretch into silence, lit by soft yellow lamps. Iron keys turn in doors that haven't moved in decades. Behind them, climate-controlled vault rooms hum quietly, guarding shelves of boxes, scrolls, and letters that almost no one is allowed to see. For centuries, this is where uncomfortable memories go to sleep. Now, rewind the scene by 3,000 years and shift the camera to the Nile. Instead of marble, you have sandstone. Instead of cardboard boxes, you have entire temple walls carved like stone hard drives, underground tombs, sealed chambers, corridors plugged with granite. Egypt built its archives out of rock, designed to outlast empires, floods, even the desert itself. Their files were hieroglyphs, carved so deep that even time would struggle to erase them. But here's the twist. Both systems were never neutral. They were weapons. Ancient Egyptian priests didn't just record history, they edited it. One of the most interesting discoveries is the Abydos King List, a long, elegant inscription showing a proud line of pharaohs. Except, some are missing. Powerful rulers like Hatshepsut, the woman who wore the beard of kingship, and Akhenaten, the heretic who rewired Egypt around a single blazing sun, simply vanish from the list. Why? Because erasing a name was the ultimate punishment. If your cartouche disappeared from stone, your soul lost its anchor in history. So what have they found when they compare those king lists to other inscriptions? Gaps, ghosts, whole reigns turned into blank spaces. This wasn't an accident, it was an official state tool. Egypt curated its own past, deciding which dynasties were pure enough to remember and which experiments, failures, or catastrophes had to be buried. Centuries later, in Rome, a different priesthood did something eerily similar. Deep in the Vatican archives, church officials sifted through texts, deciding which gospels, letters, and strange Egyptian writings were safe for the faithful, and which were too dangerous, too heretical, too destabilizing to circulate. A papyrus that hinted at a forbidden pharaonic line, a chronicle that tied Egypt's collapse to prophecies that didn't match official doctrine, that could quietly disappear into a Roman basement hidden for centuries behind a label no one questions. And yet, cracks are forming in both walls. In the last decades, parts of the Vatican's so-called secret archives, now politely renamed the Apostolic Archives, have been opened. Digitization projects scan fragile pages. Scholars request files once thought untouchable. Every so often, a document surfaces online, a photo leaks, a footnote in an academic paper hints that something unexpected has been revealed. The same thing is happening in Egypt. Sealed chambers re-examined with radar, forgotten storerooms emptied, fragments reassembled on screens instead of on dusty tables. Another incredible discovery here isn't just a single artifact, but a pattern. When you line up what survives in Egyptian stone with what survives in Vatican paper, the same shapes of absence appear. Missing names, broken timelines, sudden collapses explained only as the will of the gods. Could both civilizations have been hiding the same story? Because if the priests of Egypt and the archivists of Rome both spent centuries burying one particular narrative, a forbidden dynasty, a catastrophic fall, a decision that broke Egypt forever, then that torn papyrus under the Vatican is more than archaeology. It's a direct threat to the official version of civilization itself. And the moment its full story is read aloud, the timeline you learned in school might not survive the impact. Treasures, lost kings, and a civilization that refused to die. So if that forbidden timeline is real, then this isn't just about one torn papyrus, it's a doorway. Imagine stepping through it and watching the entire story of Egypt rewind and then play again, but with all the censored scenes restored. We won't start with the famous pharaohs. We go further back, into a shadowy pre-dynastic world before Narmer carves his name in stone. In the sand beneath later temples, archaeologists have found traces of older elites, richer graves, and symbols that don't match the official king lists. Cities that appear overnight and vanish just as quickly. Secret rulers whose names were scraped away, while the documents in our Vatican vault quietly preserve them like ghosts in an underground archive. Why were they erased, and who decided which kings were allowed to exist in history at all? Then, suddenly, the lights come on. The Pyramid Age explodes onto the scene like a supernova. Out of almost nothing, you get engineering that still looks impossible. Millions of blocks, perfect angles, star-aligned corridors pointing to Orion and the north. For centuries, people have asked how this level of precision appears almost overnight and then decays. Later, pyramids slump, shrink, and collapse as if Egypt forgot its own spell. So what have they found inside the earliest monuments that might explain this spike and why it never truly returned? As we move forward, the art itself starts to rebel. In one era, faces are ideal, frozen, eternal. Then Akhenaten arrives and everything melts. Limbs stretch, skulls elongate, royal bodies look strangely androgynous, almost alien even to other Egyptians. One of the most interesting discoveries is how his letters to foreign kings suddenly change tone, as if a new religion is rewriting diplomacy as well as worship. A single royal decision to worship one blazing sun god above all others snaps a 3,000-year spell holding Egypt together. Temples that once anchored the state are stripped, turned into banks for a new cult, and the priesthood quietly declares war. From there, Egypt doesn't collapse in one dramatic moment. It dies in slow motion. Invasions, plagues, famines, and power grabs grind the kingdom down while foreigners arrive as conquerors, then tourists, then collectors of sacred souvenirs. Greek and Roman rulers pose as pharaohs, build their own shrines, and treat the Nile like a mystical theme park. Hidden for centuries in desert shrines, prophecies describe a time when the gods will abandon their temples and the country will be ruled from far away. Do these texts really predict Egypt's extinction, or are we just seeing patterns because we're afraid of our own future? Because here's the global question. How does a civilization rise this fast, burn this bright, and then take 1,000 years to die? And if Egypt's fall was stretched out, full of warnings ignored until it was too late, what does that say about complex societies today that feel indestructible, right up until they aren't? When we zoom back to that mysterious papyrus map in the Vatican, it doesn't just sketch Egypt's beginning. The lines run north, along the Nile, past Memphis and Thebes, all the way to the Mediterranean. And at the very edge, right where Cleopatra's palace should be in Alexandria, the scribe drew a single strange symbol, half temple, half broken crown, as if whoever made it knew exactly how Egypt would die. The shock is that this mark appears centuries before her birth. So what did they know? And why did they want the church to see it first? Before Narmer, the Forbidden Dynasty, Egypt tried to forget. So if a priest in Rome was sketching Egypt's death centuries in advance, what else did he know that we don't? To find out, You have to go all the way back to what every textbook tells you is the beginning. Officially, Egypt starts with one man, Narmer, around 3100 BCE. You've seen his calling card, the Narmer Palette. On one side, he wears the tall white crown of Upper Egypt. Flip it, and there he is with the red crown of Lower Egypt. One ruler, two lands, carved in hard stone like a royal birth certificate for an entire civilization. For centuries, that's the clean origin story. Before Narmer, chaos. After Narmer, Egypt. But imagine walking into a desert excavation and realizing the story is lying to you. At Hierakonpolis, at Abydos, archaeologists opened tombs older than Narmer's reign. What they found inside does not look like a world waiting to be unified. These are not simple graves. They're elite burial complexes with wooden shrines, finely carved ivory, imported jars from the Levant, even early hieroglyphic symbols inked onto tags and pottery. You're looking at organized trade, specialized artisans, and rulers rich enough to command both. In other words, there were kingdoms here before the first king ever swings his ceremonial mace on that palette. So why erase them? The answer might be hiding in Egypt's own archives of power, the king lists. On temple walls at Abydos and in fragile documents copied for royal libraries, priests wrote out long, proud sequences of pharaohs. Yet some of these lists whisper about something earlier. A line of followers of Horus, semi-mythical rulers who reigned before the first official dynasty. Names that sound more like titles than people, floating between legend and law. And then there's one of the most interesting discoveries linked, bizarrely, to the Vatican itself. A damaged papyrus now in Rome preserves a column of royal names that do not match the standard lists. Scholars call it the Vatican column. To most, it's just a curiosity, broken, incomplete, frustrating. But to the scribe who drew that broken crown at Alexandria, it was a clue. Imagine if this column is a rare survival of a suppressed lineage, a forbidden dynasty that once ruled the Nile, then vanished. According to a lost papyrus referenced in Vatican letters from the Renaissance, these early rulers did something dangerous. The text hints that they experimented with radical ideas, tracking the Nile's floods with star movements, tying royal power to a cosmic calendar instead of the old village gods, a kind of proto-priesthood of astronomer kings. Later dynasties would have called that blasphemy, or worse, sorcery. So what have they found in the ground that backs this up? In some of those pre-dynastic tombs, grave goods are aligned with cardinal directions, decorated with boats sailing beneath star-like symbols, as if the dead were being launched into a clockwork sky. Another incredible discovery is the sudden jump in craftsmanship. Within a few generations, pottery, palettes, and weapons leap in quality, then stabilize under Narmer as if someone hit reset on who was allowed to rule. Which leaves one last, unsettling question. If Narmer wasn't truly the first, why did later Egyptians need to pretend he was? The timing is suspicious. Right after these shadowy kings disappear from the record, Egypt explodes into full power, monumental art, centralized authority, a unified religious program. It looks less like a beginning and more like a takeover. And the real key to that takeover may be hiding in the next great leap, the moment Egypt starts building in stone on a scale the world had never seen. Narmer's coup. How one king turned chaos into an empire overnight. So if Egypt's beginning already looks like a cover story, what kind of world does Narmer actually walk into? Imagine the Nile not as one kingdom, but as a narrow corridor of rival warlords. Fortified hilltop towns glare at each other across the river. Each stretch of land has its own animal standard, its own local god, its own shrine where priests whisper secret rituals to keep the floods coming. By all logic, turning this patchwork into a single state should have taken centuries of grinding warfare. But that's not what the ground reveals. Archaeologists digging into early sites see something else: a sudden spike in uniform pottery, standardized weights, shared iconography, and royal tombs that look planned, not improvised. Administration appears almost overnight. Regional cults don't vanish, they're folded into a larger system with shocking speed. How does a single name, Narmer, suddenly sit on top of all this as if someone flipped a switch? Enter one of the most interesting discoveries in early Egyptian history: the Narmer palette. At first glance, it's just a carved stone cosmetic palette, maybe used in temple ritual. Look closer, and it's pure royal propaganda. On one side, Narmer towers over a kneeling enemy, arm raised in the classic smiting pose under the watchful eye of a falcon god. On the other, he strides in procession, wearing the crowns of both Upper and Lower Egypt as if unity is already complete. This isn't a diary, it's a victory poster. And then there are the standards. Strange animal-topped poles march beside the king: falcon, bull, jackal, and more. For centuries, scholars thought of them as simple clan symbols. Now many see something deeper. These may be the emblems of older regional powers, ancient nomes, being absorbed into a single royal ideology. Their gods are still there, but now they walk behind Narmer. It feels less like conquest from nothing and more like a merger or a takeover of an existing network. Because that network may have been far older than Narmer's official story admits. Pre-dynastic graves already show luxury goods from Nubia and the Levant: beads, oils, exotic stone, evidence of trade routes stretching far beyond Egypt. Shared motifs appear on pottery and rock carvings, boat standards, even early versions of the smiting pose. So what have they found in the desert and along those ancient caravan paths? Hints that priestly elites were tracking the Nile's floods, mapping the stars and standardizing symbols long before Narmer's name is carved in stone. Now jump back to that forbidden papyrus under the Vatican, the one with the scratched-out names above Narmer. Imagine those erased kings as the real architects of this system, experimenting with central rule, maybe dabbling in taboo religious practices, until something goes catastrophically wrong. Their documents are destroyed, their letters burned, their very names scraped away. Narmer steps in, keeps the machinery, and hits reset on the narrative. Official history starts with him. The network stays hidden. And here's where the story turns from political thriller to something almost supernatural. Within just a few generations of Narmer's consolidation, Egypt doesn't just stay united. It starts building on a scale humanity has never seen. Stone architecture explodes into existence. The Pyramid Age erupts, fully formed, as if someone unlocked a blueprint that had been waiting in the dark. How do you go from mud brick forts to the Great Pyramid? 2 million stone blocks, star-aligned and still standing, without a long, visible learning curve? In the next section, we follow that leap into stone and ask whether those erased kings and the secret archives that remember them are the missing link. The Pyramid Age, an industrial-scale spell cast in stone. The leap into stone is not gradual, it is a cliff. One moment, Egypt is burying its dead in low rectangular mastabas. The next, an entire stone city for the afterlife explodes out of the desert, stacked into the first pyramid in history. Imagine standing at Saqqara around 2650 BCE. In front of you rises Djoser's Step Pyramid, designed by the mysterious Imhotep. 6 giant mastabas piled one on top of another, wrapped in a limestone enclosure wall, carved with fake doors, false buildings, entire courtyards the dead king will never physically walk through. No training models, no half-finished experiments scattered across the sands, just a 200-foot staircase to eternity, built as if they had always known how. And then, in barely a century and a half, that staircase becomes a mountain. The smooth-sided giants at Giza appear. Khufu's Great Pyramid alone uses more than 2 million stone blocks, some weighing as much as a small truck, stacked so precisely that the base is almost perfectly level and aligned within a fraction of a degree to true north. How do you test drive moving that much stone without leaving a trail of failed attempts? Where are the broken prototypes, the collapsed rehearsals, the rough drafts of this impossible architecture? Walk around it in your mind. Each side faces a cardinal direction. The corners lock into the landscape like a compass carved into the earth. Inside, narrow passages climb and descend, opening into chambers that feel less like rooms and more like organs. The so-called King's Chamber, with its granite beams layered above like ribs. The Grand Gallery, a sloping corbelled throat. It is as if the entire structure is a stone lung, inhaling starlight and exhaling eternity. Then there are the shafts, tiny angled tunnels that do not serve any obvious practical purpose, pointing toward specific stars linked to Osiris and the circumpolar imperishable ones. For centuries, these alignments were a mystery. Today, many scholars see a deliberate stellar map. The pyramid is not just a tomb, it is a calibrated cosmic instrument, a resurrection engine tuned to the night sky. To build that engine, the whole kingdom becomes an industrial-scale spell. Imagine the Giza Plateau as a sacred factory. Temples double as administrative hubs, filled with scribes tracking grain, beer, linen, copper tools, all recorded like sacred documents in living archives. Workers' villages rise nearby, planned streets, bakeries, breweries, sleeping quarters, factory towns for tens of thousands. Every loaf baked, every jar sealed, every block hauled is part of a single ritual project, feeding the machine that will launch a king into the stars. This is the industrial occult. No wands, no whispered Latin, but logistics as liturgy. The state itself bends around these tombs that behave like star machines. And then, almost as suddenly as it appears, the spell begins to fray. Later pyramids copy the shape, but lose the sharpness. At Dashur, Sneferu's bent pyramid changes angle midway, as if the engineers are unsure how steep reality will allow. By the Middle Kingdom, pyramids shrink, cores filled with rubble, outer casings stripped, many collapsing into shapeless mounds. The precision of Giza, the near-perfect corners, the locked stone courses, the clean internal geometry, fades. Whatever organizational magic, whatever tightly guarded knowledge built those early giants, does not persist unchanged. It is as if Egypt itself forgets its own greatest trick. And this is where the modern conspiracies rush in. Aliens. Lost Atlantean blueprints, secret anti-gravity devices hidden for centuries under desert sands. These theories fill documentaries and late-night forums. But here's the twist. The real mystery may be stranger than all of that. Because the inscriptions, the king lists, the later monuments suggest something unnerving. Egyptians looking back at their own pyramid age with awe, confusion, even nostalgia. So what have they found that could explain this amnesia? In the next section, a heretic pharaoh will try to rewrite the spellbook, shatter the old gods, and in the process, break the very system that kept Egypt's memory alive. Hidden chambers and star maps. What the pyramids were really pointing at. And this is where the story turns from broken names to stone that still speaks. Because while the texts fall silent, the pyramids themselves are shouting a message into the sky. Imagine standing on the Giza plateau at night. The air is still, the desert is black, and above the Great Pyramid the belt of Orion rises, 3 stars in a perfect diagonal. Now look down. The 3 main pyramids echo that same pattern, offset and scaled as if the builders were tracing a star map onto the earth. Is that a coincidence or a deliberate cosmic diagram carved in limestone? For centuries, scholars have noticed how unnervingly precise this landscape really is. Each pyramid is locked to the cardinal directions with an accuracy modern surveyors still admire. Narrow shafts in the Great Pyramid, once dismissed as simple ventilation, line up with terrifying precision toward specific stars. Orion's belt, linked to Osiris, Lord of the Dead, and Sirius, the blazing star whose rising signaled the flooding of the Nile. These aren't random holes, they are stone telescopes, frozen prayers, aiming a dead king's soul at the engines of the universe. Deep inside, the story becomes even more mysterious. Above the so-called King's Chamber, a stack of cramped relieving chambers was found, hidden for centuries, their rough ceilings scrawled with quarry marks and royal names. They look purely structural, but why inscribe the pharaoh's name in a place no living courtier would ever see? It feels less like engineering and more like sealing a spell. And then comes another incredible discovery. Using muon tomography, cosmic particles as a kind of X-ray, scientists recently revealed a vast void inside the Great Pyramid, a space no ancient document ever mentions. No passages lead to it that we know of. No one has stepped inside. Could it be empty weight relief, or a sealed ritual vault still guarding objects, texts, maybe even a star map the priest refused to share? Because these monuments were never just tombs. They were resurrection machines, political billboards, and cosmic diagrams all at once. The sloping sides echoed the primordial mound of creation. The polished casing stones once flashed like frozen sunlight. Inscriptions from later pyramids insist the king becomes an imperishable star, rising to join Orion, while his continued existence guarantees the endless cycle of the Nile, the harvest, and the state. To attack the pyramid was to attack the operating system of Egypt itself. Now, go back to that Vatican papyrus. In one cramped margin, a tiny sketch shows a pyramid shape crossed with extra internal lines, extra chambers, extra shafts, more complexity than Giza. One of the most interesting discoveries on the page, this little drawing looks like a memory of an older, forbidden design, an erased prototype whose blueprint survived only in secret archives. So who would dare rewrite a system this powerful? In the next section, a single pharaoh will try to shut down the star paths, seize the temple's wealth, and redraw the map of heaven, and almost bring Egypt to ruin. When the magic cracked, famine, pyramids, and the first Egyptian collapse. But sometimes when you try to rewrite heaven, the sky pushes back. Imagine the age of pyramids not at its glittering peak, but fraying at the edges. In the late Old Kingdom, those perfect razor-edged monuments of Giza are already centuries old, yet new pyramids shrink, their cores filled with rubble, their casing stones thinner, their corridors lined with anxious texts. On the walls, priests carve desperate pyramid texts, long streams of spells and pleading addresses to the gods, as if the stone itself has become a giant archive of worry. On the surface, the pharaoh still claims to be the living god, the single point where earth and sky meet. But under that polished image, the system is straining. More and more grain, stone, and labor vanish into royal tombs and court palaces. Provincial nobles, once obedient administrators, start building their own lavish mastabas and rock-cut tombs, decorating them with scenes of local feasts, local gods, local power. In some of these tombs, graffiti appears later, quick scratch notes from visitors and workers, small, almost secret voices hinting that loyalty is no longer automatic. Then, nature itself breaks the spell. Around the end of the Old Kingdom, climate records, lake sediments, and later documents all point to a terrifying pattern. The Nile fails. Not once, but over and over, its life-giving floods arriving too low, too late. Fields wither, storehouses empty, famine bites. When the river that was supposed to be guaranteed by divine order collapses, what does that say about the God-King who promised to control it? In this chaos, central authority shatters. What historians now call the First Intermediate Period is not just a dull gap in a king list, it is Egypt's first near-death experience. Local governors, the nomarchs, stop waiting for orders from a distant, weakened court. They carve out mini-kingdoms along the Nile, raising militias, seizing archives, and writing their own proud autobiographies in stone. In tomb after tomb, officials boast, not about obeying the pharaoh, but about feeding the hungry when the state could not. I gave bread to the starving. I clothed the naked, one inscription proclaims, a quiet but devastating verdict on a failed crown. For centuries, the promise had been simple. The king maintains Ma'at, cosmic order, or the universe slides into chaos. Now, chaos is here, and it is measurable in empty granaries and mass graves. Faith does not disappear overnight, but it fractures. Power begins to flow sideways into local lineages and, crucially, into temples whose gods seem less distant than a struggling royal house. In these sanctuaries, priests keep calendars, control offerings, and guard mysterious documents and rituals that no single king can fully command. So what have they found in this darkness? A civilization that refuses to die, but must reinvent itself. When unity finally returns and Egypt claws its way back, the pharaoh will shine again in gold and granite, yet the scars of famine and rebellion remain like hairline cracks in an ancient statue. And inside those cracks, another incredible discovery is taking shape. A quiet, growing temple power that will wait, watch, and one day challenge the throne itself. In the next section, that hidden current surges forward as new kings rise from the ruins and a reborn Egypt tries to rebuild its magic on foundations that are no longer entirely its own. Temples, priests, and a new spell. Egypt's second golden age, Egypt does something almost no other civilization manages. It dies in slow motion, then comes back roaring. After the chaos of invasion and collapse, a new spell is cast, the Middle Kingdom. Imagine dusty canals dredged, broken dikes rebuilt, law codes rewritten. Kings like Mentuhotep and Senusret stitch the country back together. turning trauma into order, fear into a new promise of Mai. But the real shockwave comes later. The new kingdom. Thutmose III rides out of the Nile Valley like a storm, campaigning into Canaan and Syria, bringing back chariots, prisoners, tribute. Ramses II covers the landscape with giant statues and carved battle scenes, each one a stone document shouting his glory. Gold from Nubia, cedar from Lebanon, exotic animals, foreign captives working quarries and workshops. Egypt is suddenly a superpower again, and its temples become the biggest winners of all. At Thebes, the cult of Amun turns into something almost unimaginable. Karnak and Luxor are not just shrines, they are a secret economic engine. Vast estates, fields, and vineyards are recorded in careful hieroglyphic accounts. Workshops hammer out jewelry, ritual furniture, and colossal obelisks. Granaries, herds, and boat fleets are all for the god, but controlled by priests who manage resources like a state within a state. So what have they found buried in the temple archives? Lists of offerings that read like royal budgets. To feel that power, follow one object, the cult statue of Amun. Gilded wood, inlaid eyes wrapped in fine linen. On feast days, it leaves its mysterious inner sanctuary, carried on a bark through the streets of Thebes. Crowds press forward, soldiers clear a path, nobles lift their hands. Offerings pour in, gold rings, jars of oil, written petitions like spiritual letters slipped into a divine inbox. Wherever the statue pauses, land grants and political favors are suddenly revealed as the god's will. Yet this new order is a compromise. The king is still divine, still son of Amun. But now he needs the priests to speak for the god, to stage these processions, to interpret what they found in omens and oracles. If Amun's statue turns away from a proposal, a campaign can be canceled. If the temple singers whisper a different prophecy, a prince might never become king. The old pyramid spell of unquestioned vertical power has quietly been replaced by negotiation, alliances, and the constant risk of quiet sabotage. Then the pattern breaks. Centuries later, foreign rulers march in. The great bark of Amun no longer sails through the city. The statue is carried one last time into storage. Imagine that same gilded figure now, shut in a dark chamber like a forgotten relic in a vault, its jewels stripped, its priests dismissed, its festivals canceled. Cut to today. A tourist stands under the forest of columns at Karnak, snapping photos, half listening to a guide. They see ruins. They don't see a headquarters so powerful that, in the next chapter of this story, a single royal decree will try to switch off Egypt's entire religious system overnight. Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh who tried to rewrite reality. That headquarters is about to be shut down, not by an enemy army, but by one man who decides the gods of Egypt are over. His name is Akhenaten. Imagine waking up one morning to a royal decree that closes your local temple, seizes its land, and declares that every offering, every prayer, every festival must now go to a single, blinding solar disk, the Aten. That is exactly what happens. The great estates of Amun are stripped, the old cults are frozen, and in a previously empty stretch of desert, a brand new capital appears almost overnight. Akhenaten, horizon of the Aten, today called Amarna. This is not just urban planning, it is a controlled detonation of Egypt's entire religious system. For centuries, pharaohs had balanced power with the priests of Amun at Karnak, trading offerings for legitimacy. Akhenaten cuts the cord. In his new city, the Aten's temples are roofless, flooded with sunlight, and only the royal family stands between God and people. No more dark sanctuaries, no more hidden statues. Worship is monopolized through the king himself. Is this piety or the most audacious power grab in Egyptian history? The art makes it even stranger. Walk through the ruins of Amarna in your mind. On fallen blocks and broken altars, you see figures with elongated skulls, narrow faces, heavy lips, and long androgynous bodies. The king's chest swells like a woman's, his hips curve, his limbs stretch. Queens and princesses look the same, like a single being endlessly reshaped. Some modern viewers look at these reliefs and whisper one word: alien. Under the rays of the Aten, scenes unfold that would have shocked earlier sculptors. The pharaoh kisses his daughters. The royal family eats, plays, rides in chariots together, all under sunbeams that end in tiny hands offering ankhs to their noses. The rigid canon of Egyptian art, frozen for centuries, suddenly melts into intimate, almost uncomfortable realism. So what have they found hiding behind this style? A mystical theology about the sun's creative light, or a ruler using holy imagery to rewrite reality around his own body? But systems do not surrender quietly. As Akhenaten sidelines Amun's priesthood, he is also tearing up the economic contracts that fed thousands of officials, scribes, and workers. The temples were banks, granaries, and archives. Shut them down, and you do not just insult a god, you choke an empire. After Akhenaten's death, the backlash is brutal. The Aten cult is dismantled. Akhetaten is abandoned to the sand. Later rulers like Horemheb and the early Ramessides order his cartouches chiseled out, his statues smashed, his name deleted from king lists. In official documents, he becomes a cautionary tale, a madman who nearly destroyed Egypt. His very name becomes a kind of curse, a forbidden word. Now, go back underground beneath the Vatican to that mysterious papyrus locked in a modern vault. On one column, a royal name has been violently scratched away, the fibers torn as if the scribe was afraid the ink itself was dangerous. Another incredible discovery. The erased section lines up with a sequence of years that could match Akhenaten's reign. Imagine later copyists under orders to mutilate any letters, any records that dared preserve his memory. Yet some traces slip through, hidden for centuries in sealed archives. One name, however, they cannot erase so easily: the boy who comes next. Akhenaten's young successor is forced to abandon Akhetaten, restore the old gods, and even change his own name to honor Amun. Tutankhaten becomes Tutankhamun. His reign is short, his burial rushed, his tomb small and almost accidental. But that cramped chamber, forgotten under debris, will survive when palaces and temples fall. And when it is finally opened, what they've found inside will resurrect not just a boy king, but the entire lost world of Egypt's rise, its forbidden names, and its long, slow fall. Tutankhamun's tomb, a time capsule of glory and decay. That moment finally comes in November 1922. In a narrow, dust-choked stairway cut into the Valley of the Kings, a small team waits in the dark while Howard Carter presses his eye to a tiny breach in a sealed door. You can almost feel the air change. A candle flickers. Someone asks, "Can you see anything?" Carter answers with the line that will echo through history. Yes, wonderful things. When the workers widen the opening and crawl inside, what they found looks impossible. Imagine a room so packed with treasure, it feels like a royal warehouse frozen in time. gilded chariots stacked like firewood, ritual beds shaped as lions and cows, shrines within shrines like a golden vault of nested boxes. For centuries, tomb robbers had stripped Egypt bare, yet here was a pharaoh's burial almost untouched, a time capsule of a world that should have vanished. So how did this one survive when so many others were looted to the bone? The answer is almost embarrassingly unglamorous. Tutankhamun's tomb is small, cramped, and oddly planned, more like a private crypt than a grand royal monument. The walls feel rushed. The paint is still flecked with drips. Most likely, the burial chamber was never meant for him at all, but for someone more important, hastily reassigned when the boy king died around 18. Then later, construction above dumped debris over the entrance, hiding it like a secret file mislaid in the archives of the cliff. His memory was politically inconvenient, too. He was the fragile heir of Akhenaten's heresy. The child used to reverse a religious revolution that the priests wanted erased. Erased kings do not usually get lavish pyramids. They get quiet, efficient burials. That very attempt to forget him may have saved everything. Inside, the objects tell two stories at once. Look at the war chariots. Their light wooden frames and gilded fittings suggesting speed, power, a king racing into battle or ceremony. The ritual beds, carved with protective deities and cosmic symbols, turn sleep into a rehearsal for rebirth. The star-spangled ceiling of the inner shrines places Tut in a sky of eternal constellations. This is Egypt at its most confident, projecting order across earth and heaven. But then you notice the seams, gold sheets hammered thin over rough wood, inscriptions where one royal name has been chiseled out and Tut's written over it. Jewelry that seems resized, repurposed, recycled. Was the kingdom already running out of time, money, and legitimacy? And then there is the body itself. The mummy that Carter uncovered was fragile, dark, almost swallowed by resins and amulets. Today, that same body has been turned into a data set. CT scans, X-rays, DNA tests peel back the bandages more ruthlessly than any Victorian scalpel. So what have they found? Evidence of inbreeding, a clubbed foot, malaria parasites, broken bones that may be from accidents or the embalmer's rough handling. The divine king, whose images show him perfect and ageless, was probably limping, sick, and vulnerable. Royal ideology had a physical cost, yet even here, the silence is as loud as the gold. There are almost no detailed documents about his reign, no triumphant letters, no long victory texts carved on temple walls. Names from the Amarna period are missing or mangled. It is as if whole chapters of Egypt's story were deliberately shredded. While the modern world obsessed over Tut's mask and coffins, the real mystery was hiding in the gaps. The erased gods, the vanished officials, the quiet financial and spiritual crisis that had already begun to hollow Egypt out. In the next chambers of our story, those gaps will widen, and you'll see how a civilization that seemed eternal slowly turned into a prize for foreign empires, and how some believe a lost papyrus, hidden for centuries far from the Nile, may hold the first warning that the end was coming. Foreign kings, plagues, and prophecies. Egypt learns how to lose. Egypt doesn't collapse in a single night. It learns painfully how to lose. First a little power, then a little pride, until the land that once commanded the horizons becomes just another line in someone else's imperial accounts. After the great native dynasty's fracture, Libyan warlords move in from the west. At first, they are merely chiefs, hired as mercenaries. Then, one by one, they take pharaonic titles, wear the double crown, and carve their names into sacred stone. Imagine walking into a temple where the walls still whisper the names of Ramses, but the new pharaoh speaks a different language at home. Is he Egyptian, foreign, or both? Then comes a startling reversal. Kings from Nubia to the south sweep in and claim Egypt not as a prize but as a patient. They present themselves as restorers of tradition, purifying the cults, rebuilding shrines, invoking the old gods with almost desperate intensity. For centuries later, their statues will still look proudly Egyptian, yet their origins are written in a different landscape, a different Nile. So who truly owns the legacy at this point? The land, or whoever can speak its rituals correctly? The Assyrians break that illusion. Their armies crash through the delta, shatter cities, and treat Egypt not as a sacred center of the world, but as a rich province to be punished and plundered. Fortresses are repurposed, garrisons installed, and the old royal residences become administrative hubs for distant kings. After them, the Persians arrive and the pattern hardens. Egypt becomes a satrapy, a tax engine. The pharaoh is now the king of kings in Persepolis, reading reports instead of leading festivals. Each invasion leaves scars. Temples are looted, then re-endowed by the next ruler, eager to buy legitimacy. Ancient walls are patched with foreign bricks. Local elites learn to survive by changing masks, their names sometimes half Egyptian, half foreign, their letters switching scripts depending on who sits on the throne. In this world, identity itself becomes a negotiation, and underneath the politics, something darker creeps in. Texts from the late period speak of pestilence, of years when the Nile fails, of bad omens streaking across the sky. Priests begin compiling mysterious prophetic scrolls that read history as a cycle, rise, corruption, invasion, and eventual restoration. So what have they found in these patterns that terrifies them so much? Here, our Vatican trail flickers back to life. Among the scattered fragments in those Roman archives, scholars whisper about late priestly papyri that seem to predict not just foreign conquest, but the end of Egypt as an independent sacred kingdom, centuries before Cleopatra. One of the most interesting discoveries is a damaged oracle text that names kings from the sea, and a time when the temples will serve strangers more than gods. Then, a pattern interrupt. Jump forward. Egypt under Greek and then Roman rule becomes a mystical tourist attraction. Foreign elites sail up the Nile to experience ancient wisdom, to see pyramids already older to them than the Colosseum is to you. Local priests stage curated miracles, sell exotic rituals, and guide visitors through carefully prepared mysteries. The land of the pharaohs turns into a living museum, and its guardians become curators. By the time Cleopatra is born, Egypt has spent centuries under foreign boots and foreign budgets. She is less the last pharaoh of a pure line and more the final brilliant player in a long game of survival and performance. And as you'll see next, when her story collides with Rome, those old prophecies about the end of a sacred kingdom may finally be fulfilled in ways that reach far beyond the Nile. Cleopatra's last bet, turning a dying kingdom into a weapon. So now imagine this, a dying kingdom that refuses to die quietly, and a queen who decides to turn the entire weight of Egypt's ancient magic into a weapon. That is Cleopatra VII. Not the Hollywood seductress, but the last ruler of a system already centuries old, walking into Rome's civil war inferno with a crown, a strategy, and almost no margin for error. Cleopatra is born into a Ptolemaic palace where the language of power is Greek. The corridors echo with Macedonian names, and royal brothers and sisters plot in whispers. Yet, step outside the marble halls and the land is still stubbornly Egyptian. In the temples of Dendera and Philae, priests chant in hieroglyphic formulas that have been spoken for centuries. In village shrines, farmers pray to Osiris and Isis, not to Zeus. Cleopatra learns to move between these worlds. Ancient writers say she speaks several languages, including Egyptian, reading old ritual documents without translators. That alone makes her something dangerous, a foreign queen who can talk directly to the Nile's gods and taxpayers. She understands the secret is not just ruling Egypt, but performing Egypt, so she weaponizes the kingdom's image. Publicly, she is not merely Cleopatra, she is Isis reborn, mother and lover of the god king, wrapped in gold, crowned with the sun disk and cow horns. When she sails to meet Julius Caesar, ancient sources describe a floating stage more than a ship, with purple sails, silver oars, incense pouring over the water. It looks less like diplomacy and more like a ritual apparition. Behind the spectacle is cold calculation. Egypt still controls grain that can feed or starve Rome, gold to buy soldiers, and a ritual prestige that Roman generals secretly crave. Cleopatra spends all three. With Caesar, then later with Mark Antony, she offers a deal: Egypt's wealth and sacred monarchy in exchange for protection and a share in the New World Order. Each alliance is a gamble. If her chosen Roman wins, Egypt survives as a semi-independent holy kingdom under foreign armor. If he loses, everything collapses. For a while, it works. Antony and Cleopatra stage ceremonies in Alexandria that look like the rebirth of pharaonic power, naming their children with royal titles, handing out eastern kingdoms like ancient gods dividing the earth. But in Rome, Octavian is sharpening a different weapon: propaganda. In letters, speeches, and carefully leaked stories, he paints Cleopatra as a mysterious Eastern temptress who has bewitched Antony and threatens Roman virtue itself. At Actium, Octavian's narrative meets Cleopatra's navy. The result is disaster. Her fleet breaks, Antony follows her retreat, and the last real hope of an independent Egypt sinks into the sea. Octavian advances on Alexandria. The city that once welcomed Caesar now braces for siege. Inside her palace, Cleopatra faces one last decision: submit and be paraded in chains through Rome, or turn her own death into a final act of control. Ancient accounts say she chooses the asp, a symbolic serpent of royalty and rebirth. Whether that exact detail is true or not, the message is clear. Cleopatra refuses to become a living trophy in Octavian's triumph. Her reported suicide is both personal tragedy and calculated statement. With her gone, Octavian walks into Alexandria not as a guest, but as a conqueror. Egypt is declared a Roman province. The pharaohs are finished. Yet in temple vaults far from the coast, some priests claim they saw this coming generations earlier. And in one set of scrolls, echoed incredibly in a damaged Vatican papyrus, copyists have drawn a final chilling symbol over the name of Alexandria itself, as if warning that the fall of this city is not the end of Egypt's story, but the key to a much older secret you're about to see revealed. The day Egypt died and refused to stay dead, Alexandria burns. The scrolls fall silent, but Egypt does not. Under Rome, the Nile becomes something stranger than a conquered province. It becomes a stage set, Emperors in far-off Italy quietly take on pharaonic titles for temple walls, their names carved in hieroglyphs as if they were living gods, even while they govern Egypt through hard-nosed prefects and tax collectors. On stone, they stand like Ramses. In reality, they sign letters and legal documents in Latin from palaces thousands of miles away. Imagine walking into Roman Egypt around the time of Hadrian. The great temples are still there, columns painted, incense burning, priests chanting the same mysterious hymns sung for centuries. But something has shifted. These sanctuaries now survive less on the will of a native king and more on imperial favor, on subsidies, on the coins of visitors who have come to see ancient wisdom performed like a sacred show. Egypt is still alive, yet it is already a curated memory of itself. And in the middle of this half-living world, our narrative object waits. The cult statue of Amun, once carried in golden barks across the city, paraded before tens of thousands, now spends most days in the dark. The great processions have shrunk into careful, almost private rites. A few local families, a few foreign pilgrims, maybe a curious Roman officer stand in the courtyard as priests move the god only a few steps, whispering formulas that fewer and fewer people can actually understand. The god of empire has become a museum piece that still breathes, yet while the temples along the Nile fade, Egypt's gods refuse to stay home. Another incredible discovery of this age is not a single artifact, but a transformation. The cult of Isis spreads like wildfire across the Mediterranean. Serapis, a hybrid god engineered in Greek Alexandria, gains shrines from Athens to London. In Rome itself, initiates slip into candlelit chambers, seeking secret visions, healing, and protection from a goddess whose homeland is slowly starving for offerings. So what have they found in Isis that their own gods no longer give? A promise of personal salvation wrapped in the prestige of a civilization already thousands of years old. Egypt becomes a brand. Its hieroglyphs are copied as decorative symbols of timeless wisdom. Its mummies are paraded, collected, even ground into powders. Its pyramids are described in letters as proof that the ancients knew things the modern world has forgotten. But behind this glamorous facade, the language that shaped those signs is dying. The priesthood that guarded the temple vault and archives is shrinking, cut off from power, from money, from the pharaohs who once needed them. For centuries, the last priests watch their universe unravel stone by stone. Some cling to rituals, others do something more desperate. They begin to compress everything they know, every forbidden king, every revolution, every carefully erased name, into coded texts, hiding meaning in layered symbols only an initiate could unlock. And one of the most interesting discoveries hinted at in that damaged Vatican papyrus is this. Somewhere in late dying Egypt, a scribe claims to have sealed the entire rise and fall of his country into a single secret manuscript. The same manuscript a modern restoration team may have just found inside a sealed box beneath the Vatican, a box whose inner map of Egypt should not exist in any surviving history. The Vatican Papyrus, a lost Egyptian epitaph or modern forgery. So the team goes back into the vault, low light, gloves. The same sealed box that was hidden for centuries beneath Vatican stone is eased open again, and this time the conservators commit to the full unrolling. Imagine that moment. The papyrus crackles, the fibers relax, and a map of Egypt stretches out across the table like a resurrected snake. What they've found inside is almost impossible. The Nile runs from edge to edge, dotted with pyramids where no pyramids should be, temple symbols where no temples are recorded. Down one margin, a tight column of royal cartouches, familiar names, then blurred, unknown kings, then gaps where someone centuries ago took a knife or a reed and scraped the documents clean. And at the very end, over the delta, over a tiny ink sketch of Alexandria, one last symbol that stops everyone in the room. Some see a broken obelisk, others see an eye deliberately crossed out. So what have they found? A lost Egyptian epitaph, or a brilliant fake? In the archives above, the debate rages. One papyrologist shrugs and calls it a Roman-era mystical diagram, a kind of visionary map drawn by a priest or magician under the early emperors, when Egypt had already become a tourist attraction for Greek and Roman elites. In that reading, the unknown kings are not real rulers at all, but allegories, like stations on a spiritual journey. Another expert, a historian of Renaissance collectors, is even harsher. The ink, they argue, behaves too well for something that sat for 2,000 years in Egyptian sand. The script style mixes periods. To them, it reeks of a 15th or 16th century forgery, created to flatter cardinals and princes obsessed with Egypt, the same way fake letters of ancient philosophers once flooded Europe. If that's true, this papyrus is not a window into pharaonic history, but into the ambitions of Renaissance Rome. Then there is the radical view. An Egyptologist brought in under strict confidentiality looks at the grammar, the odd spellings, the way certain erased names echo half-preserved king lists from Abydos and Saqqara. If this is authentic, she says, you're staring at a late priestly synthesis. An epitaph for Egypt written after Cleopatra, compressing centuries of temple memory, including rulers the state tried to delete, Akhenaten, and maybe others we've never seen. Ink composition tests hint at ancient carbon, but the sampling is tiny. Paleographers argue over the hand. Linguists point to turns of phrase that feel too late, or maybe deliberately archaic. And because the Vatican has not granted full open access, no full resolution scans, no broad publication, the argument stays locked in a small circle of specialists, each writing cautious letters, each convinced the others are missing the point. Quick pattern interrupt here. If this ever gets confirmed, you'll want to be the first to know. Hit like and subscribe so you don't miss when this story updates. Because if that column of unknown kings turns out to be real, entire chapters of Egyptian history will have to be rewritten. Back in the vault, though, the question is simpler and far more mysterious. Why did the church choose to lock this text away? Whether it's forgery or fragment of truth, the Vatican papyrus captures something real. That Egypt's story was always edited, always curated, always partially erased. Some names were chiseled out on temple walls, some letters were buried in desert caves, and some maps, it seems, were meant only for those with keys to the deepest rooms, behind the heaviest doors, where history can be quietly folded up and forgotten, or unfolded and finally revealed. Why Egypt fell, and why its ghost still rules our imagination. So if that mysterious papyrus in the Vatican vault is even half true, then Egypt's greatest secret isn't a single map or a single missing king. It's the pattern. The same pattern that began in the shadows before Narmer, when forgotten chiefs along the Nile were welded into one crown, one god-king, one story that pretended everything before it had never existed. From there, the arc is almost impossible to believe. Imagine a kingdom that goes from mud brick villages to the Great Pyramid in just a few generations. an industrial miracle of stone where star-aligned shafts and hidden chambers turn a tomb into a cosmic machine. Then, almost as quickly, the system that built it cracks. Famine, strikes, local warlords, the first collapse, power fragments, then recenters, then fragments again. Every time Egypt rises, it centralizes. Every time it centralizes, it becomes brittle. Pharaohs pour unimaginable wealth into temples and colossal monuments, while the countryside quietly starves. Overinvest in stone, underinvest in people, and the result is always the same. A beautiful, unmovable skyline, and a fragile state behind it. How different is that really from skyscrapers, megastadiums, or glittering capital cities today? Then there is religion. In Egypt, belief was never just faith, it was a political weapon. Priests controlled land, grain, and the calendar. Akhenaten tried to break that system with his solar revolution, wiping out old gods, closing temples, rewriting hymns. Another incredible discovery from Amarna shows how fast the backlash came. Names hacked out, faces smashed, letters buried. For centuries, his enemies tried to delete him so completely that even his god would be forgotten. But erasing people became a habit. King lists like the Abydos inscription skip entire dynasties. Tomb walls chisel away inconvenient heirs. The papyrus said to be hidden for centuries beneath the Vatican only echoes what Egypt's own archives already whisper. Elites curate the past. They choose which documents survive, which letters are copied, which disasters are blamed on foreigners instead of bad decisions at the top. And that is where Egypt's ghost reaches into the present. Modern states also polish their timelines, seal their files, and delay the release of embarrassing reports. Some archives open after 30 years, some after 100, and some never. Civilizations can look eternal right up until the moment the grain runs out, the soldiers go unpaid, or the stories stop working. So we return to that underground room, that impossible map, that locked Vatican door. Whether or not this specific papyrus is ever proven beyond doubt, the metaphor is clear. There are always rooms you are not allowed into, texts you are not meant to read, and versions of the past that would make you see the present differently if they were suddenly revealed. So what have they found in other basements, private libraries, royal collections? How many impossible maps, forbidden prophecies, or lost dynasties are still folded away, waiting for the right key? And what happens if one day all of those doors open at once? If you want to be there when that happens, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. In the comments, say which part of Egypt's story you think is still being hidden. Vanished pharaohs, pyramid secrets, or the true prophecies of its fall. The most intriguing theories will become the next deep dives into the archives of the ancient world.